the darkest theories about how aliens could end humanity. There are theories that scientists, military analysts, and astrophysicists take seriously. Theories about how an advanced alien civilization could end all human life on this planet. Not in years, not in decades, possibly in hours. This isn't science fiction. It isn't a movie pitch. It's mathematics. It's physics. And in many ways, it's far more disturbing than anything Hollywood has ever put on screen. Today, you're going to hear about 7 of the darkest, most scientifically grounded theories about how humanity could come to an end, not by our own hands, but by something else's. Stay until the end, because the final theory is the one that keeps actual scientists awake at night. And it might not be about them at all. It might be about us. Let's begin. In 1950, the physicist Enrico Fermi sat down to lunch with a group of colleagues at Los Alamos National Laboratory. The conversation, as it often did among physicists in that era, turned to extraterrestrial life. And in the middle of that casual exchange, Fermi asked a simple question that would haunt scientific thought for the next 70 years. Where is everybody? It's a deceptively simple question. The universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. Our galaxy alone contains somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. Recent estimates suggest that the observable universe contains over 2 trillion galaxies. Multiply that by the number of stars in each galaxy, and then multiply that by the number of planets that likely orbit those stars, and you arrive at a number so large it becomes almost meaningless to the human mind. Statistically, we should not be alone, not even close. And yet, when we look up, when we point our radio telescopes at the sky, when we scan for signals, when we search for any trace of intelligent life beyond our own, we hear nothing. Absolute silence. This contradiction has a name. It's called the Fermi paradox. And for decades, scientists have proposed dozens of explanations for why the universe appears so empty when, mathematically, it should be teeming with life. Some of those explanations are relatively comforting. Maybe intelligent life is simply rarer than we assume. Maybe the jump from simple microorganisms to complex technological civilizations is so statistically improbable that it has only happened once, here on Earth. Maybe interstellar travel is fundamentally impossible, and every civilization that has ever existed has been permanently trapped within its own solar system, with no way to reach or even communicate meaningfully with anyone else. These explanations are unsettling in their own way because they suggest a universe of profound, permanent loneliness. But they aren't dangerous. They don't suggest a threat. But there's one category of explanation that is far darker than the rest. It's not that alien life doesn't exist. It's that alien life exists, and it's staying silent on purpose, hiding, watching, waiting. And if that's true, the silence of the universe isn't evidence of our solitude. It's evidence of a threat we don't yet understand. Let's start with a theory that has terrified physicists more than any other in recent memory. Theory 1. The dark forest hypothesis. In 2008, a Chinese science fiction author named Liu Cixin published a novel called The Three-Body Problem. Within its pages, he introduced a concept that would later be taken up not just by science fiction fans, but by working astrophysicists, defense analysts, and even members of organizations like SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The concept is called the dark forest hypothesis. Here's how it works. Imagine the universe as an enormous, pitch-black forest. Every civilization in that forest is a hunter, armed, moving silently through the trees. Each hunter has 2 absolute rules for survival. Rule number 1, stay hidden. If another hunter discovers your location, You cannot know their intentions. You cannot know if they are peaceful or hostile. You cannot know if they are stronger or weaker than you. Rule number 2. If you ever reveal your position to another hunter, the only rational choice, the only safe choice, is to assume they are a threat and eliminate them before they can eliminate you. Not out of malice, out of pure, cold survival logic. Why would this be the default behavior of every civilization in the universe? Because of two unavoidable facts about life itself. First, every civilization wants to survive, and every civilization's needs for resources will eventually grow. Two civilizations competing for the same finite resources across the vastness of space will eventually come into conflict. Second, and this is the part that should genuinely unsettle you, there is no way to verify the intentions of another civilization from a distance. You cannot send a message and wait for a friendly reply, because the gap between sending a signal and receiving a response could be hundreds or thousands of years. A civilization that seems peaceful today could become a threat by the time you actually meet them. And a civilization advanced enough to travel between stars is, almost by definition, advanced enough to annihilate a less developed one without effort. So the safest strategy, the only strategy, is silence. And if you ever detect another civilization, the safest strategy is not communication, it's elimination. Now think about what humanity has done over the last 70 years. In 1974, scientists at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico transmitted a radio message directly toward a cluster of stars 25,000 light-years away. The message contained information about our DNA, our solar system, and our location. We've launched spacecraft like the Voyager probes, each one carrying a golden record with images of human beings, the location of Earth relative to known pulsars, and audio recordings of our languages and music. We have, for decades, broadcast our location, our biology, and our existence into the void, loudly, repeatedly, and without any idea of who or what might be listening. Stephen Hawking, one of the most respected physicists in modern history, warned about this directly. He compared making contact with an advanced alien civilization to indigenous populations encountering European explorers during the age of colonization. As Hawking put it, that kind of encounter, in his words, did not, generally speaking, go very well for the less advanced civilization. Under the dark forest hypothesis, the silence we observe across the universe isn't an absence of life. It's the sound of every other civilization staying quiet, because they already understand the rules of the forest. And we, by comparison, have been shouting into the darkness for 50 years, with no idea what might be listening back. If this theory is correct, the most dangerous thing humanity has ever done isn't nuclear weapons, or climate change, or anything we've done to ourselves. It's saying hello. There's another layer to this theory that's worth sitting with for a moment. The dark forest hypothesis doesn't just explain why civilizations might stay silent. It explains why, if a civilization ever does break that silence, the response is unlikely to be a conversation. Think about it from a purely strategic standpoint. Imagine you're an advanced civilization, thousands or millions of years ahead of humanity technologically. You detect a faint radio signal coming from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. You have no way of knowing with any certainty whether that civilization is peaceful, whether it will remain peaceful as it develops, or whether it might one day become a competitor for resources across hundreds or thousands of years of future expansion. You also have no way of explaining your own peaceful intentions to them, quickly or convincingly, across light years of empty space. Any message you send will take years or centuries to arrive. Any reply will take just as long to return. By the time a meaningful conversation could even begin, both civilizations may have changed entirely. Under those conditions, mathematicians and game theorists who have studied the dark forest scenario point out that the rational, self-interested choice isn't curiosity. It's elimination. Quiet, immediate, and final. Not because the more advanced civilization is cruel, but because in an environment of total uncertainty, where mistakes can mean extinction, caution looks exactly like aggression. This is part of why some researchers in the SETI community have, over the years, grown increasingly cautious about a related practice known as messaging extraterrestrial intelligence, which involves actively transmitting signals into deep space rather than simply listening. Several prominent scientists have publicly argued that humanity should stop doing this entirely until we better understand exactly who or what might be listening on the other end. Theory 2. The relativistic kill vehicle. If a hostile civilization did decide that humanity needed to be eliminated, you might imagine it would look like the movies. Massive spaceships entering our atmosphere, beams of light destroying our cities, some kind of dramatic, visible confrontation. The reality, according to physicists, would likely be the opposite. It would be invisible, instant, and there would be absolutely nothing we could do to stop it, or even see it coming. This theory involves something called a relativistic kill vehicle, sometimes referred to by the acronym RKV. The concept is almost insulting in its simplicity. You don't need lasers. You don't need bombs. You don't need any exotic alien weaponry at all. You just need a rock. Here's the physics behind it. Kinetic energy, the energy of a moving object, increases not just with mass, but exponentially with velocity. An object the size of a small asteroid, even something as modest as a few tons, accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light, would carry an amount of destructive energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear warheads detonating simultaneously. A civilization with the technology to accelerate an object to even 10 or 20% of the speed of light would not need to invade Earth. It would not need to negotiate, communicate, or even reveal itself. It would simply launch a relatively small projectile in our direction from a distant solar system years or decades in advance. And here is the part that should genuinely disturb you. At those velocities, the object would be traveling so close to the speed of light that there would be no meaningful warning. Light itself only travels so fast. By the time our telescopes detected an incoming object moving at a significant fraction of light speed, the time between detection and impact would be measured in seconds, or it might not be detected at all until the moment of impact. There would be no negotiation, no declaration of war, no final message. The projectile would simply arrive, and in an instant, depending on its size and trajectory, it could be capable of ending civilization as we know it, or in a more extreme scenario, rendering the planet itself uninhabitable. This isn't speculative fringe theory. Physicists and researchers affiliated with organizations studying existential risk, including members associated with the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford, and researchers in SETI-adjacent fields, have discussed relativistic kill vehicles as a serious, physically plausible mechanism by which an advanced civilization could neutralize a perceived threat with total efficiency and without ever making contact. This ties directly back into the dark forest hypothesis. If the safest response to detecting another civilization is preemptive elimination, then a relativistic kill vehicle is the most logical, most efficient, and most terrifyingly simple way to carry that elimination out. No warning, no warfare, no mercy. Just physics. And if you're wondering whether humanity would even know what hit us, the honest scientific answer is probably not. We would likely never know we were being erased, or why. Theory 3. The pathogen scenario. Not every theory about alien-driven extinction involves weapons or violence at all. Some of the most chilling scenarios involve something far more subtle and far more familiar to human history: disease. Throughout human history, The deadliest encounters between civilizations have rarely come from swords or guns. They've come from microorganisms. When European explorers arrived in the Americas in the late 15th and 16th centuries, the indigenous populations they encountered had no prior exposure to diseases like smallpox, measles, or influenza. Historians estimate that in the century following first contact, somewhere between 50 and 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas died, overwhelmingly from disease rather than direct violence. Entire civilizations, in some cases, were devastated before a single shot was fired, simply because their immune systems had never encountered the pathogens that arrived with the newcomers. Now apply that same principle to a civilization arriving from another world entirely. A biological agent, even one that was never intentionally weaponized, could be catastrophic if it interacted with human biology in unpredictable ways. Humanity has no evolutionary history with extraterrestrial microorganisms, no immune defenses calibrated to handle them, and potentially no understanding of how to treat or contain them once exposure occurred. This isn't a purely hypothetical concern within the scientific community either. NASA, along with international space agencies, maintains strict protocols known as planetary protection guidelines. These protocols exist specifically to prevent two scenarios: contaminating other worlds with Earth-based microorganisms and, just as critically, bringing unknown extraterrestrial biological material back to Earth in an uncontrolled way. Samples returned from Mars by future missions, for example, are intended to be handled under quarantine conditions stricter than nearly any biological containment protocol currently used on the planet, specifically because scientists cannot rule out the possibility, however small, that an unknown microorganism could pose a serious biological risk to life on Earth. Under this theory, an encounter with an alien civilization wouldn't need to be intentional, hostile, or even direct to be devastating. It could be something as simple as the unintended exchange of biological material. A handshake, a breath, a single particle carried on a piece of equipment, triggering a chain of consequences that no one on either side intended or could have predicted. In this scenario, the most terrifying alien isn't a creature with weapons. It's a creature, or even just a microorganism, with absolutely no understanding of what it's doing to us. In the same way a person with a common cold has no understanding of how devastating that same virus might be to a population that has never encountered it before. 4. The simulation shutdown. This next theory moves away from biology and physics entirely and into something far stranger and arguably even more unsettling, because it suggests that humanity's extinction wouldn't require any alien spacecraft, weapon, or virus at all. It's called the simulation hypothesis, and it was formally proposed in a 2003 academic paper by the philosopher Nick Bostrom, currently affiliated with Oxford University. The argument goes like this: as technology advances, civilizations may eventually develop the computational power to create fully realistic simulations of conscious beings, entire simulated universes populated by minds that experience their reality as completely real, with no way of distinguishing simulation from so-called base reality. If this is technologically possible, even in principle, then statistically, simulated realities would likely vastly outnumber actual original realities. Which means, from a purely probabilistic standpoint, the odds that any given conscious being, including you right now listening to this, exists within an original physical universe rather than a simulated one are surprisingly low. Now, where do extraterrestrials fit into this? Under one interpretation of this theory, advanced alien civilizations wouldn't need to invade us, attack us, or even make contact with us in any traditional sense, because they could already be the architects, or the administrators, of the simulated reality we exist within. In this scenario, The end of humanity wouldn't look like a war or a plague or a kinetic impact event. It would look like nothing at all. One moment, existence as we understand it would be continuing as normal, and the next, it simply wouldn't. No warning, no event, no physical cause that any survivor could point to, because there would be no survivors, and no physical universe in which an event could be observed. This theory is, admittedly, the most philosophical of the seven. It can't be tested in any conventional scientific sense, and prominent physicists remain divided on how seriously to take it. But it has been discussed seriously in academic settings by figures including Bostrom himself, and it raises a question that even hardened skeptics find difficult to dismiss entirely. If we are, in fact, living inside a system built and maintained by an intelligence vastly superior to our own, how would we ever know? And more importantly, what happens to us the moment that intelligence decides it's done observing?
Theory 5. The silent replacement.
This theory takes a very different approach. Instead of asking what might happen to humanity in the future, it asks an uncomfortable question about the present. What if it's already happening? This theory proposes that rather than launching a sudden dramatic invasion, an advanced alien civilization might choose a far slower, far quieter method of neutralizing a perceived threat. Infiltration. Observation. Gradual influence over the institutions, technologies, and decision-making structures of a target civilization, carried out over generations, so subtly that the target population never realizes it's happening until it's far too late to resist. This theory draws heavily on a specific and controversial category of testimony. Reports from individuals who claim to have experienced alien abductions and who describe encountering beings that appear to be partially human and partially something else entirely. Hybrid beings, as they're often described in these accounts. It's important to be direct here. These claims are not scientifically verified. No physical evidence of alien hybrid beings has ever been independently confirmed by any credible research institution. Many of these accounts have been studied by psychologists and sleep researchers who point to phenomena like sleep paralysis, a condition in which a person experiences vivid, often terrifying hallucinations while unable to move, as a likely explanation for a significant portion of reported abduction experiences. But the theory persists, in part because of testimony from individuals who, by most accounts, have no obvious motive to fabricate their stories, including, notably, military and aviation personnel who have described encounters they cannot otherwise explain. Under this theory, the invasion, if you want to call it that, wouldn't involve battles or visible confrontation at all. It would involve generations of careful, undetectable influence, reshaping institutions, technologies, even genetics, slowly enough that by the time anyone noticed, the transformation would already be complete and irreversible. Whether or not you find this theory credible, it raises an uncomfortable question that's worth sitting with for a moment. If a civilization were patient enough and advanced enough to take this approach, how would we even recognize it was happening while it was still happening? Researchers who study this theory from a more skeptical, psychological angle point out something equally interesting. Even if no literal infiltration is occurring, the persistence of these reports across cultures and centuries is itself a phenomenon worth examining. Stories of beings who appear human but aren't quite right, who walk among us undetected, who blend in just well enough to pass unnoticed, appear in folklore long before the modern concept of extraterrestrial life existed at all. Changeling legends in European folklore, tales of shapeshifters in numerous indigenous traditions across the world, stories that, century after century, describe something that looks like us but isn't one of us. Some researchers in psychology and anthropology suggest this pattern reflects something deeply embedded in human cognition itself. an evolved wariness toward the idea of an undetectable threat hiding in plain sight, repackaged in each era using the cultural language available at the time. In earlier centuries, that fear took the form of demons, spirits, or changelings. In the modern era, shaped by space exploration and decades of UFO testimony, that same underlying fear has simply been re-expressed using the vocabulary of extraterrestrial biology. Whether you interpret the silent replacement theory as a literal possibility or as a modern reflection of an ancient psychological pattern, it points to the same unsettling core idea. Some of our deepest fears aren't about violence at all. They're about not being able to trust what's standing right in front of us. Theory 6. The imposed singularity. This theory shifts focus towards something far more directly tied to our current moment in history: artificial intelligence. Many AI researchers today, including figures associated with major research institutions, have expressed concern about what's sometimes called the technological singularity, the hypothetical point at which artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence so dramatically that it becomes effectively impossible for humans to predict, control, or understand its subsequent actions. Now apply that same concern to a scenario involving an external, non-human intelligence. If an advanced alien civilization had developed artificial intelligence systems far beyond anything humanity currently possesses, one theoretical method of neutralizing a perceived threat without violence, biological agents, or kinetic weapons at all would be through direct interference with a target civilization's own technological infrastructure. This isn't entirely speculative fiction either. In recent years, defense and intelligence agencies, including the United States Department of Defense, have publicly acknowledged ongoing investigations into what are now officially termed unidentified anomalous phenomena, a deliberate shift away from the older term unidentified flying objects. Reports declassified through Freedom of Information requests and testimony delivered during congressional hearings in 2023 have included accounts from military pilots and intelligence officials describing objects exhibiting flight characteristics, extreme acceleration, instantaneous directional changes, and the apparent absence of any visible propulsion system that current human aerospace technology cannot replicate. Some researchers have speculated, and it remains firmly speculation rather than established fact, that any civilization capable of producing technology this far beyond our own would almost certainly possess artificial intelligence systems capable of remotely accessing, disrupting, or controlling human technological infrastructure, communication networks, financial systems, power grids, without ever needing to set foot on the planet at all. Under this theory, humanity's downfall wouldn't be marked by destruction. It would be marked by dependency. A slow, quiet loss of control over the very systems we've built our civilization around, until one day we simply discover that we are no longer the ones in charge of them. Theory 7. The Great Filter. We've saved this theory for last because out of everything we've discussed today, this is the one that troubles scientists the most. And it might be the one that has nothing to do with aliens attacking us at all. It's called the Great Filter, and it was formally articulated by the economist Robin Hanson in 1998, building directly on the foundation of the original Fermi paradox. Here's the core idea. If the universe is as vast and as old as we know it to be, and if the building blocks of life are as common as our observations suggest, then intelligent, technologically advanced civilizations should be common too. Statistically, the galaxy should be full of them, but it isn't. As far as we can currently determine, the universe appears empty of detectable intelligent life. The Great Filter Theory proposes that somewhere along the evolutionary path from simple chemistry to single-celled life to complex organisms to intelligence to technological civilization to interstellar travel, there exists at least one barrier so difficult to overcome that almost no civilization successfully passes through it. A filter that eliminates nearly everyone who reaches it. And here's the question that should genuinely concern you. We don't know where that filter is, and we don't know if we've already passed it, or if it's still ahead of us. If the filter is behind us, if it was, say, the original formation of life itself, or the jump from single-celled to complex organisms, both of which are statistically rare and poorly understood events, then humanity may already be one of the rare success stories. We may, against staggering odds, have already survived the hardest part. But if the filter is ahead of us, the implications are far darker. It would mean that every civilization that reaches our current level of technological development, nuclear capability, environmental manipulation, artificial intelligence, the ability to engineer biological agents, eventually self-destructs before they're able to expand beyond their home planet. Not because of aliens, not because of asteroids, not because of any external force at all, because of themselves. Under this interpretation, the silence of the universe isn't evidence that we're being hunted, or hidden from, or protected from. It's a graveyard. A record of civilization after civilization, reaching almost exactly where we are right now, and going no further. This is the theory that unsettles scientists most, not because it involves alien invaders, but because it suggests the greatest threat to humanity's survival was never going to come from outer space at all. There's a particularly uncomfortable detail buried inside this theory that doesn't get discussed often enough. Researchers who study existential risk professionally, including teams at institutions like Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute and the Center for the Study of Existential Risk at Cambridge, have pointed out that humanity, right now, in this exact moment in history, possesses nearly every capability theorized to be part of a potential great filter. We have nuclear weapons, capable of ending civilization within hours. We have the demonstrated ability to alter our planet's climate on a scale that threatens our own long-term survival. We are actively developing artificial intelligence systems whose long-term behavior even their own creators cannot fully predict or control. And we are engineering biological agents with a level of precision that, in the wrong hands, or through simple accident, could trigger consequences we may not be able to contain. In other words, if the Great Filter does exist somewhere ahead of every civilization that reaches our stage of development, we are, right now, standing directly inside it. Not approaching it, not preparing for it, already inside it, navigating it in real time, whether we recognize that fact or not. And that reframes everything we've discussed today. Every theory involving an external alien threat, the dark forest, the kinetic weapon, the pathogen, the silent replacement, the imposed singularity, assumes the danger is coming from somewhere out there. The Great Filter suggests something far harder to accept. That if any civilization like ours has ever failed to survive its own technological adolescence, the failure likely didn't come from above. It came from within.
None of these 7 theories have been proven. No credible scientific institution has confirmed direct, verifiable contact with an extraterrestrial civilization, hostile or otherwise. Everything we've discussed today exists at the intersection of legitimate physics, credible academic speculation, and the genuine uncertainty that comes from trying to answer one of the biggest questions humanity has ever asked. But the fact that serious scientists, working at serious institutions, continue to publish papers, host conferences, and openly debate these exact scenarios tells you something important. The question isn't really, are we alone, anymore?
The real question, the one that should actually keep you up tonight, is, are we safe? And maybe, after everything we've just covered, the most unsettling answer isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about us. Consider for a moment what we've actually established across these 7 theories. In the dark forest hypothesis, the danger comes from being seen. In the relativistic kill vehicle scenario, the danger comes without warning, from forces too distant and too fast to detect. In the pathogen theory, the danger could be entirely unintentional, a byproduct of contact rather than its purpose. In the simulation hypothesis, the danger isn't even physical at all. In the silent replacement theory, the danger has potentially already arrived, undetected. In the imposed singularity, the danger lies in our own dependency on systems we no longer fully control. And in the great filter, the most chilling theory of all, the danger was never external in the first place. 7 different theories, 7 different mechanisms. And yet, almost every single one of them arrives at the same underlying truth. Our survival, more than anything else, depends on what we don't yet know, and possibly on what we've already done. If you found this disturbing, you're going to want to see what comes next. Because next week, we're covering the most chilling military testimonies ever declassified. Real accounts from soldiers who claim they encountered something out there that was never meant to be seen. Subscribe now, Aliens Dark Tales, and we'll see you there.